to showcase your main argument in this book that numbers define the Chinese politics until they failed to count what mattered and what they counted did not measure up. Could you also give us some examples during the Xi Jinping era?
The COVID story is something that is kind of fits into the overall argument very, very nicely. I was finishing the book when COVID happened in the kind of like in early 2020, and I had to write about it. Early 2020 in Wuhan in particular, the COVID situation is a classic example of a local government trying to hide bad information, bad numbers. And so and the difficulty of the center to understand that is happening even when they try, that localities do have a real ability to obfuscate, to kind of make things difficult for the center to see. Then under zero COVID for 2 years, China has a relatively successful kind of like track record against the virus. If the only thing that you care about is the number of deaths from COVID, then zero COVID policy was quite successful. But as we all know, that increasingly that became a kind of success, but with kind of very catastrophic downsides. The lockdowns of Shanghai and other cities in particular became too much for the citizens of the country to deal with and to bear, too much of a burden. And they eventually kind of rebelled against it this past fall. And then finally, I think the zero COVID, kind of the end of zero COVID and the wave that happened, I think is another example of real statistical manipulation, that the official statistics are still only around 100,000 deaths. And yet the real number from all of the public health data that we know, and even the number of infections that various government officials have suggested have happened in China, well over 1 billion infections, we know that the number of dead should be much closer to 1 million compared to 100,000. And so this is one example where I do think that the official statistic is very far from reality.
What are the major effects that Xi Jinping may try to hide now and in the future, and how could it penetrate that?
I think it's hard for me to not focus on the COVID numbers right now. I think COVID deaths, even if most of the country, the massive wave has already happened, I would imagine that there are continued, just like in other countries around the world, that the virus persists and kind of continues to circulate. And yet the official statistics are not capturing this at all. And so the extent to which this is a real phenomena that is being ignored, I think is something that everyone should pay attention to.
Is there any way that we could find out what is the real death toll number in Wuhan during COVID?
During the original moment, I think is very difficult, and I think going forward, it's also very difficult to think about. I think we have a sense that the official number is very different from what reality must have been, but I think it is hard to know what exactly the kind of like the current infection numbers are or what fatalities are inside of the country. I think it's important for the people who are suffering, whose family have people who have been very ill or have in fact died, that do not feel like their deaths have been counted or recognized, to pay attention. But I don't know if I have great answers about the ways in which this we can really keep track, either of that early moment or of what is happening now.